The boardroom of AstroCorp's orbital headquarters was cloaked in oppressive silence. The wide, transparent walls showcased the breathtaking expanse of space, but no one admired the view. The stars felt distant and indifferent as the company's CEO, Adrian Vex, stared at the financial holograms flickering before him. Red figures bled across the projections, painting the grim picture of a corporation on the brink of collapse. "We've lost another 7 freighters this week," Vex said, his voice heavy, each word dragging like lead. His sharp, angular features seemed carved from stone as he looked around the table. 70% of our cargo is either stolen or destroyed before it reaches its destination. If we don't act now, AstroCorp will be a cautionary tale by the end of the quarter. The gathered executives shifted uneasily in their seats. Metallic creaks and murmurs punctuated the tension. Tychon, a tall, insectoid strategist with shimmering carapace plates, clicked his mandibles. "Perhaps we could attempt negotiations with the pirate factions," he suggested tentatively. "Offer them tribute or protection fees." Vex's gaze snapped to Tychon like a blade. "You think bribes will save us? We've already tried that. They took the credits, then blasted our ships anyway." Across the table, Tainara Voss, a reptilian logistics expert with emerald scales, spoke, her voice a smooth hiss. "What about advanced defense systems? Upgrading our escorts? A more conventional solution?" "Conventional solutions haven't worked." Vex slammed his hand on the table, the sound reverberating like a cannon shot. "We've outfitted our ships with the best shields and armaments credits can buy. Every time we adapt, they adapt faster. It's like playing chess against someone who already knows your next move." A cold silence followed, the weight of failure settling over the room like a storm cloud. The air felt suffocating, the faint hum of the station's life support systems the only sound. Vex took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't afford to show weakness now. "I have a plan," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But it's unconventional." Tychon leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "What kind of plan, Vex? We're out of resources and options." Vex stood, the stark lighting casting long shadows behind him, and keyed in a sequence on his datapad. The holograms shifted to display a dossier. 5 individuals, their faces unmistakably human. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "Humans!" Tainara recoiled, her scales flashing pale yellow. "You can't be serious." "I am," Vex replied, his voice resolute. "They're notorious for their unpredictability, their ingenuity under pressure. No one expects them to operate within reason, and that's exactly what we need." Tychon hissed through his mandibles, a sound akin to a blade scraping against steel. "You're proposing we entrust our survival to creatures whose primary export is chaos. Do you know what they call Earth? A death world." "Exactly why they're perfect," Vex shot back, his eyes blazing. "Pirates know how to deal with logic. They know how to deal with predictability. What they don't know is how to deal with people who look at the rules and laugh." Tainara's voice dropped, laced with disdain. "They're reckless. They willingly leap into danger for amusement. They celebrate things like skydiving and base jumping. What's to stop them from jeopardizing everything we've worked for?" Vex gestured to the holograms. "Look at these numbers, Tainara. We're already on a knife's edge. If we don't take this risk, there won't be anything left to jeopardize." He turned away from the table, staring out into the endless void. "You're all thinking about their reputation. But I've done my research. Humans survive. Against odds that should have crushed them millennia ago, they survive. Their history is one long chain of defiance." Tychon clicked his mandibles again, this time in wary contemplation. "And what exactly is this team supposed to do?" "They're coming here to overhaul our defenses," Vex replied. "But their methods will be unorthodox. We're not hiring them to fight the pirates conventionally. We're hiring them to outthink them." Tainara's tail lashed against her chair. "When do they arrive?" "Tomorrow," Vex said, his voice quieter now. "They're already en route." The room erupted into chaos, voices clashing in heated arguments. Tychon's mandibles clacked furiously as he muttered about company reputation. Tainara hissed in frustration, her claws scraping against the metal surface of the table. Vex let them argue, their protests washing over him like static. He had made his choice. As the meeting adjourned, Vex lingered behind. The room, now empty, felt cavernous and cold. He looked again at the holographic dossier, at the faces of the 5 humans who would either save AstraCorp or accelerate its demise. His gut twisted with doubt, but he pushed it aside. They needed something different, something drastic, something human. The next day, the docking bay buzzed with a nervous energy. Crews from every department had found excuses to be present, their whispers echoing through the cavernous space. A low hum vibrated through the floor as the incoming transport ship prepared to dock. Vex stood at the front of the gathered crowd, his posture rigid, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. The hiss of decompressing air signaled the ship's arrival. The airlock cycled open, releasing a faint metallic tang into the bay. The first human stepped out, and the gathered aliens froze. The man wasn't particularly tall, nor was he clad in menacing armor. He wore a simple uniform, the earth patch on his shoulder a subtle reminder of his origins. His sharp, dark eyes surveyed the room with a casual confidence, and a disarming smile spread across his face. "Captain Leon Kane," he said, his voice a rich baritone that carried easily over the silence. "Pleasure to meet you all." He held up a small box and grinned. "I brought donuts. They're from Earth. Trust me, you'll love them." Behind him, 4 more humans emerged, each carrying equipment cases and wearing expressions that ranged from mild amusement to intense curiosity. A red-haired woman immediately broke away from the group, her eyes scanning the bay with unnerving focus. "Hey, Leon," she called over her shoulder. "These cargo locks, solid construction, perfect for creative uses." "Creative uses?" Tainara asked warily, stepping forward. "What do you mean?" The woman turned, her grin mischievous. "Oh, you know, things." The other humans laughed, a sound that made several aliens flinch. It wasn't hostile or derisive. It was lighthearted, almost carefree. It was unsettling. Vex stepped forward, extending a hand to Kane. "Welcome, Captain. I trust your team is prepared?" "Always," Kane replied, shaking Vex's hand firmly. "But I have to warn you, our methods aren't what you're used to. Just give us the room to work, and I promise we'll make these pirates regret ever crossing you." As the humans began unloading their equipment, the gathered aliens watched in a mix of fascination and apprehension. Their tools weren't standard military fare. There were odd contraptions that hummed and whirred, containers marked with bright warning labels, and even a device that appeared to dispense glitter. "This is either the boldest decision of my career," Vex murmured to himself, "or the beginning of the end." Kane overheard and turned, his grin widening. "Relax, CEO. The beginning of the end? That's exactly what we're planning. For the pirates, anyway." For a moment, Vex felt a flicker of hope. Then Kane opened one of the glitter containers, and the doubts came flooding back. The hum of the docking bay faded as the last of the humans stepped off their transport ship, their footsteps reverberating through the cold, sterile halls of AstraCorp's headquarters. CEO Adrian Vex stood motionless, watching the 5 humans unpack their equipment with an intensity that bordered on unsettling. There was no fanfare, no introductions, just the quiet chaos of bags being opened, tools being unloaded, and the heavy presence of something strange and new. Leon Kane, the human captain, surveyed the room with a detached curiosity, his eyes glimmering with something that could only be described as a quiet confidence. "All right, folks, let's get to work," Kane said with a grin, his voice casual, almost jovial, like he was about to perform a magic trick. "We've got pirates to deal with." Vex shifted on his feet, torn between disbelief and reluctant admiration. Here he stood, watching humans, who had no history with space warfare, no fleet of ships, and no reputation beyond their chaotic nature, walk in and begin doing what was supposed to be an impossible job, securing the most vulnerable cargo lanes in the galaxy. He had gambled everything on their unpredictability, but now the weight of his decision was pressing down on him, like the cold space outside the station's walls. We'll need the security schematics, Kane continued, already moving toward the central terminal without waiting for permission. Vex hesitated, then nodded and gestured to one of the alien crew members to provide the data. As Kane studied the display, the rest of his team spread out across the room, each member moving with a purpose. One of the women, short red hair glinting under the artificial lights, crouched beside the cargo bay's massive locks. She ran her hands over the surface, her fingers brushing the cold metal. "These are perfect," she murmured, a gleam in her eye. "Just the right weight for a surprise. How's your gravity here?" Tainara, the reptilian logistics expert, bristled at her words. "Surprise?" she echoed, her voice a rasping hiss. "You'll need more than surprise to protect our ships." The woman who had introduced herself as Lisa flashed a smile. "You'd be amazed what a little chaos can do to pirates. But sure, we'll need some adjustments. Things need to be malleable, make the unexpected their new reality." Vex was about to respond when he caught sight of the rest of the human team moving toward a series of large, metallic crates. They opened one, revealing a tangle of wires and strange-looking devices. He couldn't help but notice how many of them were smiling. No signs of fear, no hesitation, just calm, almost unnerving confidence. "All right, Adrian," Kane said from the terminal, where he was now reviewing ship defense protocols. "We've got what we need. Now let's talk about the plan." Vex stepped forward, his mind already racing with the implications of what he had just set in motion. He couldn't afford to let the humans fail. He had made a desperate move, and now it was all on the line. "You'll need to follow our standard protocols," he said, the authority in his voice less certain than it had been in the boardroom. "The pirates won't hesitate to retaliate, and they know how to deal with conventional defenses." Kane raised a hand, his eyes flashing with humor. "Conventional? That's exactly the problem, isn't it? They've already cracked every logical defense you've thrown at them. Now we'll do something different." Vex's pulse quickened. "Different? You mean unpredictable?" Kane grinned wider, clearly enjoying the reaction. "Exactly." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The humans worked quickly, their hands moving with an efficiency that surprised even the veteran crew members. One of them, a wiry man with a perpetual smirk, began to speak in rapid-fire sentences, outlining a series of modifications to the station's security systems. Vex could barely keep up as he processed the madness they were suggesting: strobe lights, gravity distortions, even music playing through the communication systems. But what struck him most was how methodical it all seemed. These weren't just whimsical ideas, they were tactics, disguised as eccentricities. Lisa and Kane worked side by side in the control room, laughing and joking while simultaneously testing the station's defenses. They moved seamlessly between the tasks, as if every move had already been rehearsed. Vex stood back, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, watching with growing unease. These humans didn't just think outside the box. They had torn the box apart and used it to build something entirely new. They seemed to have no fear, no hesitation. Their approach was absurd, but the pieces fit together in a way that was almost genius. The first test came sooner than expected. The pirate fleet, known for its cunning, had been watching Astrocorp's ships for weeks. Now they were ready to strike, their vessels lurking in the depths of space, waiting for the right moment. The humans had set a trap, a bait ship filled with empty cargo containers, rigged with the kind of harmless yet disruptive technology that only they could come up with. The trap was baited. The pirates were approaching, and everything was set in motion. Vex watched from the command center, his eyes locked on the tactical display. The pirates closed in on the bait ship, their scanners pulsing. Everything appeared normal, until the first cargo container detached and began to drift toward the pirates. The pirates hesitated, confused by the lack of any immediate threat. Then a series of lights flickered across the bay, flashing in an intricate, impossible pattern. The container began to spin, and before the pirates could react, the next container followed, and the next. The pirates scrambled to engage their weapons, but it was too late. Their sensors were overwhelmed by a mass of flashing lights, shifting colors and erratic movements. The pirates fired, but their shots went wide. The containers didn't even have weapons. They were simply designed to create chaos. The pirates tried to correct their course, but the human modifications were too effective. The cargo containers seemed to dance around the pirates' ships, moving unpredictably, blocking their views and jamming their sensors. What followed was a barrage of confetti and glitter bombs that detonated in space, covering the pirates' ships in a reflective cloud of sparkles. The pirates had no idea what was happening. They couldn't target the ships, couldn't see through the flashing lights and clouds of glitter. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, and yet it was a nightmare for the pirates, not AstroCorp. Vex's mind reeled as he watched the pirate ships retreat in disarray, their once dominant fleet stumbling back into the darkness. The humans had done it. They had turned a routine attack into a chaotic spectacle. The pirates were humiliated, their pride shattered. But in that moment, Vex knew something he had refused to believe just hours earlier. The humans were winning. Kane's voice came through the comm system, smooth and casual as ever. "Well, that went well. A little too well, maybe. What's next, Adrian?" Vex stared at the tactical display, his fingers twitching as if he could still feel the tension of the battle. "We wait," he said, the words slow, deliberate. "Let's see if they come back for more." And as the lights in the control room flickered, Vex allowed himself a breath. There was no turning back now. The humans had just rewritten the rules of engagement, and somehow he knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The aftermath of the pirates' humiliating retreat still hung thick in the air. The remnants of their fleet had scattered into the dark corners of space, their communications a chaotic mix of confusion and disbelief. CEO Adrian Vex stood at the observation window, staring out at the distant stars, his thoughts heavy. The human team had done the unthinkable. They had shattered the pirate fleet with nothing more than unpredictability. He couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, while decisive, was merely the beginning of something much larger. "Are we really sure that's it?" Vex muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper against the hum of the station's machinery. A quiet beep from his terminal snapped him out of his reverie. It was a status update from the command center. The pirates had not only retreated, they had started broadcasting warnings across the galaxy, their shame broadcasting like a beacon of failure. The message was clear: stay away from AstroCorp. The humans are worse than anything we've faced. But Vex's mind churned. The pirates would regroup, of course. Every warlord, every mercenary group in the galaxy had their pride, and pride had a way of pushing people to challenge what they thought they couldn't defeat. The next move would be crucial. One wrong step, and all of AstroCorp's hard-won advantages could crumble. "Do you think this is over?" Vex said, his voice colder now as he turned toward the human team, still lounging in the briefing room, completely at ease despite the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. Jack Stone, the captain of the human team, didn't even glance up from his comms terminal. "Not even close," he replied casually, his grin wide but his eyes focused. "It's just getting started. You've got them rattled, Adrian. But the real challenge will be getting them to come back for more. The question is, are you ready to escalate?" The word sent a cold shiver down Vex's spine. He knew what the humans meant. This was just the beginning of the battle for AstroCorp's survival. The galaxy's biggest pirate syndicates would be watching, waiting to pounce. And this time, the stakes wouldn't be as easy to win. The station was strangely quiet now. The artificial lights buzzed overhead, flickering faintly. It was a lull, unnerving in its stillness. Vex could feel the weight of the silence, the tension hanging like a thick fog. But there was something else, something he couldn't quite place. He had learned that there was always more than met the eye with the humans. They saw things differently, and that made them dangerous. Jack Stone broke the silence, standing up suddenly, his boots clicking on the polished floors as he moved toward the strategic map. "Adrian," he said, his tone shifting slightly, "we've got eyes on another fleet, bigger this time. They're getting organized, but they haven't struck yet." "Show me," Vex demanded, his voice sharp now. His mind raced, already preparing for the worst. The pirates wouldn't leave AstroCorp alone. They never did. But there was something more to this. These pirates had learned quickly, and they were adapting. They would come back stronger, smarter, with more firepower than before. The tactical display hummed to life, showing the formation of a fleet emerging from the darkness. Their ships were vast, their hulls gleaming like polished metal, brimming with weaponry and heavy shields. The ships weren't just a random assortment, they were coordinated, methodical. The pirates were preparing for a more serious push this time. Unbelievable, Vex breathed. They've reassembled a fleet that big in such a short time. They're not just coming for our cargo anymore, Kane, one of the human engineers, said as he peered over Vex's shoulder. They want your station, and they're going to try to crush anything that gets in their way. Vex clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. The danger was real. The pirates had taken the initial humiliation to heart, but this time they weren't making the same mistakes. This wasn't just about cargo ships anymore. AstraCorp was in their sights, and once the pirates had the station in their grip, they'd control the entire trade route. Jack Stone seemed unbothered, casually flipping through reports on his tablet. Looks like they've learned from their last failure, he said. More guns, bigger ships, and they've got themselves some serious muscle this time. So what's the plan? Vex asked, his voice edged with impatience. We can't just sit here and wait for them to roll in. Stone turned, his usual grin absent, replaced by a focused look that felt almost foreign on him. We don't wait, he said. We turn the tables. You've seen how they react to unpredictability. We hit them first, keep them guessing. The pirates might think they've got the advantage, but they don't know how we think. What do you mean? Vex asked, suddenly aware that his hand was gripping the edge of the table. He'd never seen the human team so serious. And the realization hit him all at once. They were not only capable of beating the pirates, they were capable of doing something far worse. They were capable of changing the rules of warfare itself. Jack stood straight, his eyes burning with something that resembled excitement. They want a predictable target. They want a defenseless, isolated station. So we give them that, and we let them think they're winning. Then, he paused, his grin slowly returning. We surprise them. Vex's stomach tightened. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't going to be a simple defense. If they played along with the pirates' expectations, it would set them up for something far more dangerous. But Stone's confidence was infectious, and despite his reservations, Vex found himself nodding. The traps are set, Adrian, Stone continued, a dangerous gleam in his eye. Now we bait the trap. We've got something special lined up for them this time. It'll keep them on their toes. Vex turned to the tactical display, his mind still reeling. The pirates were closing in, and everything, absolutely everything, depended on the next few hours. It was a high-stakes gamble, but he could see now that it was the only choice they had. The humans had done the impossible once already. Now he was being pulled into a web of unpredictability, and he had no choice but to trust them. As the human team prepared their plans and set their devices into motion, Vex stood by, watching the chaos unfold on the display. He couldn't help but wonder what would come next. These humans, they weren't just soldiers or mercenaries. They were an enigma, something entirely different. And as he glanced up at the flickering screen, the weight of what they were about to do settled heavily on his chest. Let's show them, Vex muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. Let's show them how it's done. But deep in his gut, he knew this wasn't just about pirates anymore. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had far more to offer than anyone had ever expected. The hum of the station had grown louder with anticipation, each passing minute dragging the tension to a breaking point. The pirate fleet had been sighted in the distance, its ships slicing through the blackened void of space like a knife through butter. They were coming, and with them came the certainty that everything AstraCorp had worked for could be torn apart in an instant. Vex stood in the command center, staring at the incoming fleet displayed on the holographic map. His mind buzzed with the weight of the decision he had made. The humans had convinced him to trust in their method, unexpected, illogical, and utterly unpredictable. He knew they would act, but just how far would they take this madness? Status report, Vex barked, his voice clipped as he ran his fingers through his hair. The tension in the room was palpable. Officers were glued to their consoles, tracking the pirate fleet as it drew nearer. Their faces reflected the same anxiety that Vex felt crawling in his gut. "The pirates are maintaining their course," Kane, the human engineer, said. His voice was steady, but there was a certain excitement in his eyes. "They think we're unprepared, Adrian. They think we're just waiting for them to make the first move. Let's give them that." Vex looked over at him, his expression hard. "I don't want to play games, Kane. These are pirates, not amateurs. If we mess up, we lose everything." "They won't know what hit them," Jack Stone's voice cut through, carrying the cool confidence that had become his trademark. He leaned against the wall, arms folded across his chest. "You've been doing things their way, playing defense. It's time to turn that around. We'll take the fight to them." The sound of Jack's words reverberated in Vex's mind. It was bold, reckless, but there was a truth to it. They had spent too long waiting for the pirates to make their move. The pirates knew exactly what to expect from AstroCorp: protocol, order, defense. The human team, however, had no such limitations. They didn't play by the same rules, and maybe, just maybe, that was their greatest strength. Jack tossed a quick look toward his team. "Phase 1, ready?" Lisa, the red-haired human strategist, nodded, her fingers dancing across the console with remarkable precision. "Ready? We've set the bait, and the trap's in place. All we need now is for the pirates to bite." Vex's mind raced. "What exactly are you planning to do? How is this supposed to work? This is a risk. One mistake and—" "Relax, Adrian," Jack interrupted, the corners of his mouth twitching in amusement. "What's the worst that could happen? We get a bit messy. And the pirates? Well, they're already making their way in." Before Vex could respond, the warning light blinked red, and the station's sensors flared with activity. The pirate fleet had entered attack range, their weapons powered up, casting a cold, ominous glow across the viewport. Vex clenched his fists, his breath catching in his throat. This was it. He turned to his team. "Get ready. I don't want any surprises." The human crew didn't flinch. Jack's grin widened, and for a moment, Vex saw the madness behind it. The humans were ready to throw everything they had into the fire. "Phase 2 in motion," Jack called out, his voice calm. "Initiating deception." A series of AstroCorp cargo ships, previously modified and marked with their bait symbols, drifted lazily into view, emitting faint distress signals and flashing broken navigation lights. To anyone observing, they were perfect targets. They had been rigged to appear vulnerable, like easy pickings for pirates hungry for a payday. And the pirates, predictable as always, took the bait. Vex felt his pulse quicken as the pirate fleet maneuvered into position, circling the bait ships like vultures. Their sensors locked in, their weapons primed and ready. The pirates, with their arrogance, were already convinced of their victory. "Now!" Jack's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. With a series of synchronized maneuvers, the cargo ships exploded into a chaotic dance. The bait ships began moving erratically, propelled by hidden thrusters, disorienting the pirates. Flashing lights flickered across the fleet, blinding their sensors with disorienting patterns of light and color. The pirates, unable to adjust their targeting systems in time, were caught in a storm of confusion. But that was only the beginning. The cargo ships erupted, disgorging a myriad of small, brightly colored objects into space. Glitter, confetti, and foam-filled containers tumbled through the vacuum. Pirate ships, still reeling from the flashing lights and disorienting patterns, tried to recalibrate their systems, but the glitter had clogged their sensors, making them blind to the targets in front of them. "Phase 3 now!" Jack shouted, his voice full of excitement. Vex watched in disbelief as the pirate ships, their precision weaponry rendered useless by the sheer chaos of glitter and flashing lights, began to falter. A few of the ships attempted to break away, but the human-engineered decoys had them completely off balance. They were confused, panicked, and as a result, they were losing control. One by one, the pirates began retreating, unable to make sense of what was happening. The coordinated attack from the humans, with their unorthodox tactics, had thrown them completely off course. The chaos spread like wildfire through the pirate ranks. "This is madness," Vex muttered under his breath, as the pirates, once so confident, now scrambled for any sort of semblance of order. He watched as their fleet fragmented, disintegrating under the pressure of human ingenuity. The space around them was littered with bright, glittering debris. It was a mess, a brilliant, chaotic mess. Vex could barely believe what he was seeing. The pirates were fleeing, their pride wounded beyond repair. The battle had shifted. The tables had turned. It was AstroCorp's victory, but it had come at the hands of an entirely new kind of warfare, one that defied all logic and expectation. As the last of the pirate ships limped away, Jack Stone clapped his hands together with a satisfied grin. "See? That's how you turn a fight into a party. They'll be talking about this one for a long time." Vex let out a slow breath, his mind still reeling. The pirates had been humiliated, yes, but it wasn't just the pirates who had been caught off guard. The galaxy would hear about this. They would learn that humans weren't just unpredictable. They were capable of turning the very art of war into something absurdly brilliant. Vex turned to Jack, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "You weren't joking. You actually pulled it off." Jack's grin was wide and full of amusement. "Told you, Adrian. We just had to show them what humans can do when we get a little creative." Vex couldn't help but smile, a strange sense of respect forming for the crew he had once doubted. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and they would continue to do so until it was far too late. "We're not done yet," Jack continued, his voice hardening slightly. "We've got their attention now, but soon enough bigger players will come knocking. We've set the stage, but the real game starts when they bring out the big guns." Vex turned back to the tactical display, the victory still sinking in. The pirate fleet was gone, but this was just the beginning. Soon enough, other, more dangerous forces would move into the fray. And this time, they wouldn't be playing by anyone's rules. As the station settled into a strange, uneasy calm, Vex realized that the true test was still ahead. The humans had just shown them one way to fight, one that no one had seen coming. But the war was far from over, and this was just the first of many battles yet to be fought. The calm that followed the pirates' retreat was only temporary. As the echo of victory began to settle, a far more pressing reality loomed over AstroCorp. The pirates were just a shadow of the real threat that awaited them. The moment the pirate fleet had turned tail and fled, a new message had come through, one that sent ripples of tension through the command center. The message was brief, cold, and unyielding. "We've seen enough. Prepare for war." Adrian Vex stood before the large tactical screen, his gaze fixed on the pirate retreating into the stars. But his mind was already on the next battle. His fingers flexed involuntarily, the sudden weight of what came next pressing down on him. The humans had shown their hand and it had worked, but now it was time for something bigger. Something that required more than just clever tricks and distractions. Something real. "Adrian," came the voice of Jack Stone, cutting through the momentary silence. "We've bought some time, but the real fight's coming. The real players are about to arrive." Vex turned to face him, his face grim. Jack's words had become a guiding force for him, a reminder that what the humans had accomplished was just the beginning. A part of Vex still couldn't understand how Jack, a man with no formal training in strategy, had managed to outmaneuver the pirates, turning a battle into something they hadn't seen coming. But Vex had come to respect it. The unpredictability, the madness. It was human ingenuity at its finest. "What do we do now?" Vex asked, his voice rough with the weight of responsibility. "We keep doing what we do best," Jack replied, his grin as confident as ever. "Survive, adapt, and make sure our enemies can't guess what happens next." Vex couldn't help but smile. Jack Stone's words rang in his ears. Humanity had been underestimated for so long in the galaxy's grand scheme of things. They had been written off as primitive, as irrational. But AstroCorp, under the guidance of this peculiar team, was about to change that perception forever. "Phase 4, Vex said, turning back to the screen, his voice steady now. "We don't just defend anymore. We attack. We take control. We make the galaxy understand that underestimating humanity will cost them more than they bargained for." As the words left his mouth, there was no hesitation. He knew what had to be done, and so did the team. The countdown began. The massive fleet that had once seemed so overwhelming, those fleets of carefully calculated power, was now suddenly unsure. While they had the numbers, the experience, and the firepower, they hadn't accounted for the madness that would soon be unleashed upon them. Astrocorp's fleet, now fully coordinated and prepared, powered up for the next move. Every human ship, with its array of unpredictable capabilities, was ready to fight. The moment the first shot rang out in the distance, it would be followed by something entirely new. A new way to fight. A new way to win. The enemy ships appeared on the horizon, a towering mass of warships, formidable in their sheer size. The Galactic Federation had heard of Astrocorp's success with their pirates, and they had come to deal with it, to end it, to restore order. But they wouldn't get the chance. "Lock in all frequencies," Jack said, his voice calm as the station's crew readied their positions. "Let's show them who they're dealing with." Vex's fingers hovered over the controls, giving one final look at the human crew around him. They were ready. This was it, the next chapter, and the way it would unfold was up to them. "We've been trained to adapt," Jack added, looking over his shoulder at the others. "And when they come, we'll make sure they remember the lesson we're about to teach." The enemy fleet moved closer, their ships cutting through the stars with unflinching precision. They were unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon them. They were calculating every move as if they had all the time in the world. They were wrong. The first wave of missiles shot across space like the fangs of a predator, closing the distance with brutal intent. But the humans, with their chaotic, beautiful unpredictability, responded in kind. The cargo ships, turned war machines, emerged from the shadows, undetected by enemy sensors. Their thrusters flared, lighting up the darkened space. Like a ballet of light and destruction, the human fleet danced through space. They moved with precision, coordinated chaos in every direction. They weren't just fighting, they were making the fight their own. As the first enemy ships attempted to retaliate, they found themselves surrounded. What was meant to be a simple battle of attrition became something much more, something impossible to predict. The pirate tactics had been just the beginning, but now they had evolved into something greater. The humans had weaponized unpredictability, and the galaxy had no idea how to handle it. The Federation ships were disoriented. Their sensors were flooded with data, false readings, jamming signals, and bright bursts of light and color. The human fleet scattered, weaving between enemy ships in a stunning display of calculated chaos. And it was working. They couldn't track the movements of the humans. They couldn't keep up. "Activate the Phase 5 protocols," Vex ordered, his voice now steady with a grim satisfaction. He knew what was coming next. "It's time for the final move." The human ships, using their specially designed thrusters, began to move in wild, unpredictable patterns, zigzagging, swerving, and diving as if they were leading the enemy in a complex game of cosmic hide-and-seek. The Federation was caught off guard. The calm, methodical approach they had relied upon for centuries was being dismantled by a species that had never played by their rules. "This is how you fight," Jack said, his voice unwavering. "And this is how you win." The Federation's ships began to falter, unable to maintain their formations, their once solid tactics crumbling under the sheer randomness of human strategy. The fear set in. Panic rippled through their ranks as the realization dawned. They were being outplayed. And then it happened. The final shot was fired, not from a weapon, but from the human will. They had broken the enemy. The Federation ships scattered, retreating, their pride shattered, unable to respond to a force they could never understand. The battle had been won. Vex stood, motionless, watching as the Federation ships turned tail and fled into the vastness of space. The weight of the victory settled over him. They had done it. They had not only survived, they had taken control. The lesson had been learned. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, and it was no longer a species that would be underestimated. The galaxy would remember this moment. The humans had shown them that when backed into a corner, when there was no other choice, they would fight, and they would make sure no one would forget how it was done. "You did it," Vex said quietly, turning to Jack. His voice was heavy with a new understanding. "You weren't just surviving. You were changing the game." Jack smiled, leaning back in his chair, eyes glinting with the same fire that had burned in the human's eyes from the beginning. "No, Adrian, We were teaching them, and now they'll know. The Federation had learned their lesson the hard way. They thought they could control the galaxy. They thought they could predict every move, but they hadn't counted on humanity. And now they would have to face the consequences of their arrogance. In the depths of space, the last remnants of the Federation fleet limped away. And with that, humanity's place in the galaxy had been secured, not as a species to be ignored, but as a force to be reckoned with. The game had changed. Humanity had shown them how it was done.